Welcome back to the Behind the Well show. Roger Abel here with Elias Randall. Elias, nice to see you on this sub-zero day as we record this episode of the Behind the Well show.
Hello.
I thought for sure school was getting delayed today, by the way.
Did you?
Well, I called Molly earlier in the week and said we might have to move the podcast back because I think school's getting delayed, but they didn't.
Well, they must have got all the buses started.
Not ours. Not ours. I was sitting at the bus stop and text message, bus is going to be 20 minutes late.
Engine was,
probably
diesel was probably gelled up.
That's what I said. So ended up dropping them off at school. But, well, hopefully this weekend we'll get a nice little thaw. But one thing that doesn't seem to be thawing as quickly as we would hope, prices of goods. I think inflation is back. I don't know if it's back like it was, but it definitely is on the forefront of a lot of people's minds. And I think you can see it reflected in the price of the 10-year yield, right around 4.5%, which if you look back to September of 24, we were sitting right around 3.6, so almost 1% higher, even though interest rates have been lowered by the Federal Reserve on the short end. And we just had the inflation report come out. We're running about 3% over the last 12 months, a little bit higher than we thought. And the producer price index, which is a measure of wholesale prices, reinforced that bad news with a gain of 3.5% year over year. So if you think about it, the Federal Reserve target's about 2, and we're running at 3.5. It's higher. I think that people are still feeling the crunch of higher prices, and we start to see that through different parts of the economy.
I think so. I also read the other day that the flows into TIPS, the inflation-protected securities, the treasuries, the TIPS, I think that those flows have increased, so that probably shows inflation is on people's mind about it ramping up and getting worse. I guess some of my thoughts on it, I'm not sure that people have enough money to support higher prices. I think it'd be different if we had a lot of excess liquidity and extra money out in the economy like we did a few years ago. And the part of the reason I bring that up was I also read an article that McDonald's came out and said that they hit their price. So they tried a price increase and then their sales went down. So they feel like they're priced where they should be, and they were unable to capture another price increase. So I think that's kind of telling that consumers are, and the biggest portion of consumers are people at the lower end of the income spectrum. They're kind of tapped out. But here's the thing I don't know is, can upper middle class, wealthy people, can they do enough spending to support inflation? So that's where I'm really, I know it's on people's mind. I'm having a hard time seeing how it's going to continue to ramp up when people don't have the money. And then a place like McDonald's, they try to pass on another cost increase and they weren't able to do it.
When was the last time you went to McDonald's?
I don't really go there.
Probably
go there. A few years ago. I know the last time I went, I felt I was running late for a meeting, and I hadn't ate all day. It was the closest thing. So I have been there in the last probably 3 or 4 years, but I do remember my opinion of it was, wow, I just spent like $13 or $14 for McDonald's. I'm never going back.
The average price of a Big Mac meal in America is $9.29.
Yeah, I'll cook a hamburger at my house.
The reason I asked the last time that you went, the last time I went was about 2 years ago, and it's because we were traveling to Chicago. My kids had to go to the bathroom. I didn't get any food. My daughter ordered a fry and a slushie, which about an hour later was in the floor of my car an hour later because she got sick on the car ride. So I remember the last time that I went. But I think if you look at the social economic classes that tend to frequent McDonald's, it is on the lower end of pay.
probably.
I mean, if I went out and
I
pulled
mean, there's
people
probably
making
plenty
north
of middle class people too that
for sure
eat there.
And I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you haven't been there, and I don't go there. It's not where I choose to go. I'll go spend $4 or $5 more and sit down at a restaurant and wait for it.
I think you can go get a decent burger at places for about the same price now. Now you're going to have to tip. And
No, you're right. And the reason I bring this up, we went to Disney over Christmas. The resort I stayed at, Disney Resort, we stayed at the Contemporary. They had a restaurant called the Sand Trap. It was right there by the pool. The kids' meal, which came with a burger that they cooked on the flat top, a side of fries, which were really good. I don't know if they're McDonald's good, but they were really good. Fruit and a drink. Not fast food, like real food. $8.99 on the resort. So now McDonald's is more expensive than getting a kids meal. I don't know who's paying $9 for a Coca-Cola, a Big Mac, and French fries. That's probably why I don't go. Like I might go for the McRib.
Yeah, they don't have, and I absolutely eat fast food. But typically it's going to be Chick-fil-A or Culver's or the fast food places I like, and their prices are probably the same. But it's just I thought that was kind of telling that they're not able to do any more price increases at this time.
So that's interesting because while I know Chick-fil-A is fast food, I don't think people view Chick-fil-A as fast food.
I think it's viewed as a better option.
The healthy alternative.
Right or wrong, it's probably just as unhealthy.
Well, no, it's not. I go to Chick-fil-A. I get a 12-piece grilled chicken nuggets. They're 180 calories. Like, there's not anything on the menu at McDonald's that's 180 calories.
Oh, I'm sure they got a carton of milk or a salad.
By the time you put that dressing on that salad, it's 180 calories. And the cheese. Just saying, so I think one of the things is how are investors actually going to deal with inflation? Now, there are some positives that came out of the Fed minutes that were recently out there. One of them being housing costs, that they feel like it's finally getting under control. And I watch, I follow the housing market fairly closely, not for a specific reason other than I'm interested in it. I'm always kind of interested in what's happening in other areas across the country, because in the Midwest, we tend to be at the back end of most trends. If something happens on, the coast around us, we get it later. It just is what happens. But I've been watching and doing some research on different areas of housing, and there are becoming pretty significant price drops in rental properties, which is probably the first thing that has to happen to get the cost of shelter under control.
Rents
coming
stabilizing.
down. Yeah. Yes. So one of the things, if you're worried about inflation, that you have to think about is who benefits during inflation. There are people that benefit during inflation.
Yeah, I know the answer.
You know the answer, and I do too. It's people who own assets that don't depreciate. So if your goal is, if you believe inflation's coming, you should be thinking when you buy something, is this something that's going to increase in value or not over time? And the people who've done significantly well the last 4 years in this inflationary environment are those individuals or companies that own assets. Hard assets, stock market assets, any kind of asset you could own has done well. If you own ground, if you owned real estate, pretty much of any kind, other than with the exception of office, right? There's some office and some commercial real estate problems that are out there. But if you owned a home and you had assets in the stock market, inflation has benefited you.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Certainly.
If you were struggling 5 years ago, how are you better off now unless you've done stuff like that? How are you? It's probably not possible to be better off unless you have done that.
Your income probably depending upon the industry you're in, your income could have benefited. But if you didn't own assets the last 4 years, you kind of got your butt kicked.
Yeah.
I mean, you did, because you saw your grocery bill double, if not triple. Your income didn't double, which arguably how much you spend on groceries isn't a direct correlation to your income. Like groceries tripled, your income didn't need to triple. I mean, no one's spending all of their money on their grocery bill.
Yeah, you only spend a percentage of your money on it.
But either way, it's taking a bite out. And the other thing that's really getting people is insurance. Cost of auto insurance, homeowners, the cost of insurance is bananas.
Yeah, a lot. I mean,
I remember you used to be able to insure 2 cars for $100 a month, full coverage.
Man, good old days.
Homeowners, a lot of people paying a lot of money for homeowners insurance. Taxes have gone up. Your property taxes went up. Inflation happened. What? That's the silent tax, right? Well, if your house went up 30%, guess what happened to your property taxes?
It went up as well.
They reassessed it and they went up 30%. Yeah. So all of those things are starting to take a hit. And I think when you look at it, it gives people a lot of reasons or a lot of excuses why they can't actually accomplish something.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if someone's behind for retirement, let's say they're 50 and they're behind, well, instead of trying to figure out how they're going to save, they'll use the excuse, well, the housing costs us so much and inflation has done this and I just can't save any money. And they use that as a reason why they're not going to accomplish their goals, because it was somebody else's fault, even though you can control your housing cost. Maybe you have to go to a less expensive place to live. You can control your food cost to an extent. You could go from brand name instead of going to Whole Foods. You can go to Fairway. You can lower your cost if you need to. But it got me thinking that, I run into this a lot where people use this as a reason. They're 50 years old and they're like, I'll never be a millionaire. I had an individual in the other day, and you'll know who I'm talking about. We've actually talked about him in the past. He came to me about 10 years ago, and his wife had fought cancer for a number of years, and they literally had spent all of their money on her health-related stuff. And he's an engineer, so he's a numbers guy, but you got to take care of your family. And he came to me, I want to say he was 57 at the time. $100,000 saved for retirement, wants to live on $6,000 or $7,000 a month. So not asking for the world. And his probability of success was 0. Well, he came in now 10 years later. He has over 1.1 million, 10 years. And his probability of success is 99% and everything's worked out. And, he always says, hey, we're really grateful to you guys. I'm like, well, we laid out the plan, you executed it, and then some. But to my point, he shared with me at the last meeting that before his wife had passed away, his wife lined up to have a financial advisor come over and talk to them. And this financial advisor told them, you'll never be a millionaire. That's what he told them.
That's how, what,
because
like the first time you
53,
met him?
I don't know if it was the first time.
Yeah,
he just told them
sure,
hey, you're 53 with nothing saved. You'll never be a millionaire.
That's pretty harsh I guess the other way you could approach that is, here's the things that you would have to do to accomplish that goal.
That's where I'm going with it.
Right.
Guess what? This was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
How many people
can accomplish that over 15 years? If you got the right income and you can save the right amount.
How many people, though? How many advisors 15 years ago were embracing holistic financial planning to go show this individual and demonstrate how it could be done?
Yeah, not near the number that's been the big transition the last 15 years.
Right. So it's much easier for me to quantify it.
Yeah. Because
that's what we do. Where this individual just looks at, well, you have $100,000, that'll never be a million, not thinking somebody could start saving $2,000 or $3,000 a month. So I guess where I'm going with this, if you're 50, you can still retire a millionaire.
You can.
It's not that hard. There's a report put out by UBS Global Wealth that 1 in 15 Americans are millionaires. The number that are going to be millionaires is going to be higher as long as we put people on track to do that. But I don't think most people realize 1 in 15 people is a millionaire. That's a pretty high percentage.
Well, and it starts with, like, I think one of the things I'm most proud of this client for is they didn't make excuses and they paid attention to their situation and then they executed the steps, right? And I know they're very appreciative, but really we can uncover the path for somebody, and we can walk the path with them, right? But you can't do the work for them. And I think that's one of the here. People talk about all these different things that people do. One thing wealthy people do is they know their situation and they have some sort of plan that they're executing, right? They're being intentional about what they're doing. It's not just happening by mistake. I mean, yeah, sure, you could go buy a lottery ticket and accidentally become super wealthy doing that, but most people, it's going to take a certain amount of accountability and mindfulness towards, hey, these are the things I want to accomplish. And it's really not, it's not a complicated formula, but it requires a small amount of discipline to execute. And then it also requires eliminating like a negative mindset about, well, inflation's been this and the cost of everything, and I want to buy a house and now houses are expensive. You can't change any of that, right? That's the situation.
You have to navigate that.
Yeah, you have to navigate it. And ultimately you have to decide, I'm not going to make excuses. I'm going to figure out a way to make it work. And
So
if you're willing to do that, it's not that hard.
here's how I make it work for a 50-year-old who wants to be a millionaire. Really simple. If you earned 8% a year, that's what you averaged.
Okay.
Okay? You need to save $60 a day or $1,821 a month.
So like what, 21, 22,000 a year?
It's $21,000 a year. If
Which
you make
in your
10,
50s should be
well,
doable for a lot of people.
Let's use a household income making $100,000, so nothing crazy. I mean, that's if you have two people working, you're probably making $100,000 to $125,000 at a minimum.
Oh, for sure.
So let's just say it's 100, right? And your company matches 4%. So if you get the full company match, there's $4,000. There's $4,000 out of 100,000. There's 4. So you need to do 14. 14% savings rate. You should be able to do that. And if you don't, that's where you have to go figure out how to navigate housing market and your spending and all of that stuff. Like if you're 50 and you can't save $1,500 a month, you need to reevaluate your situation. You're overspending. Whether you like it or not, you're overspending.
I just think the
bottom line,
there's a big majority of people that's not the answer they want to hear. So
no, because they want to keep living their life and push us down the road, and they'll end up on Social Security with a minimum amount of savings and be dependent upon someone else helping them. I mean, our best clients, they're saving way more than that. Not even our best clients. Our average clients are saving that.
That's kind of like a minimum, really. I mean, the average person we work with is at least doing enough. I mean, I don't know any young people we work with that I think, they're not going to be a millionaire someday. I mean, they're doing all the right things. And they're only going to grow, right? They're going to make more money. They're going to be able to contribute more. They systematically increase their savings. And here's what's crazy about people that are very good with money. A lot of times they're worried that they're making wrong choices. The other day, I just had a meeting, young family. They're like young 40s, have kids, no debt. Their home is paid, and they live out in a nice acreage. Home is paid for. They're going to have pensions at retirement. They're maxing out Roth accounts. And their number one concern every time I meet with them is we want to make sure we're doing the right things and we're not making any mistakes. If you're living but there's people living paycheck to paycheck that they wouldn't want the feedback on how am I doing? Am I doing this correctly or am I doing this incorrectly? So even people, it's really incredible. You see people that are doing all the right things, like they're paying attention to their situation, but their biggest concern is, are we making a mistake?
You know what's ironic about what you just said?
What?
Most of I would say the vast majority of our young people that we work with, and young, I would put under 45, let's call it. Okay? I'm 46, so I'm old now, but I was young a year ago.
You could move it to under 50 and then you're still in there.
No, I'm going to leave it 45.
As an investor, I think under 50 is still young. I mean, really under 55 is an investor.
Probably.
But anyway.
Here's what's ironic. I would say the vast majority of the people we work with under 45, that is 100% how they feel. I can't think of a single family or individual that I work with that's under 45 years old that doesn't adhere to that same philosophy. They all know where they're going because they did a financial plan. They all know what their savings rate is. They're all going to be millionaires if they're not already. And most of them don't have exceptionally high pay. Not like they're making $400,000. They have good jobs, but they're not. Household income,
right?
Household income 200, let's say. They still can do a Roth IRA.
Yeah, they all have good jobs. Most of them are not, because most of them aren't executives or anything.
So
there's just a low percentage of people that have those high income jobs.
Here's my question. Is the reason we don't have many clients who fall under the category of I spend too much, I don't save enough, right? You were talking about the individual families that are stretched. It's the reason we don't have those individuals is one, they don't want somebody to tell them they're making a mistake, or is it two, they just think they know how to do it better and it's actually putting them in a worse position?
That's a good question. There's probably a combination of those things. It's probably also a factor of people that are more geared with that mentality. If they interact with us, they might just decide they might think I can't be a client with them because I'm not doing I'm not doing that stuff. I don't like their message, whatever it may be. It's probably a combination of both.
Yeah, I think it probably is a combination of both, but I never really thought about that because I don't think I reflect that much on what our clients are doing right, because they're all so similar. They're different but similar. They all share those characteristics. So I think the good news is if you're 50 and you're not on track, you still have a chance. That said, there are some steps you need to do to get on track. And the number one step you need to do is you need to sit down with your advisor or go to btwellshow.com or click the link in the description of this video or podcast. And you need to get a financial plan put together to see where you stand. It's really hard to find out what you need to do to be successful if you don't know where you stand now. It's kind of like your health. If you're 50 and you haven't done a physical, how do you know what you need to improve on? I don't like
you watch YouTube and then you figure it out.
Yeah, but if you don't know what you have, it doesn't matter. Seriously, you haven't been diagnosed. I hate going for my physical, but I go every year. Not because I want to know what's wrong, but I want to figure out and fix it if I have something wrong. But here's the other thing I thought about, and this probably correlates directly to families that have financial advisors. When I know I have a physical coming up every year at the same time, do you think I want to just be at my worst going into the physical or my best? From a health standpoint.
You don't want to be at your worst, right? Because then you're going to get a bunch of bad news.
So here's my cycle. From January through May, because I know May 7th or somewhere in there is about what my physical is, because I just do it the same date every year. I've got to start improving my health. So for 5 months, and you know me, you know what I do. I put a very concerted, focused effort on my health, making sure I work out, making sure I'm not eating a bunch of junk food, like just trying to cut a few pounds. Because when I go to the physical, I want to be at my best. I don't want to trick it, but I want to be at my best. Well, that then carries over for a few more months. And then by September, October-ish, you kind of fall off the wagon a little bit, right? Because, oh, yeah, it's still 9 months away or 6 months away when I have to go back. And then Thanksgiving, Christmas comes, you have all the sugary treats, all the food, and then January, you get back at it.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do your physical like January 15th, right after holiday season.
It's when I did mine last time. Like the first one I ever did was right after the holidays.
So that was probably not
horrible.
great.
It was the worst part. So, I spent the month of November hunting. Like,
yeah, so
all
your
my free time's hunting.
Yeah, diet
my
and
diet's
exercise
Casey's Pizza.
out the window. Yeah.
Casey's Pizza and Red Bulls and all that stuff. Like, that's what it is. My point, though, is now that I go every year for a physical, I spend probably 8 months of the year giving some level of focus to my health, where before it was zero. If you had a financial advisor, you automatically are going to put a different level of focus to your finances because there's somebody kind of looking over your shoulder telling you what your progress is. There has to be a psychological correlation between an advisor and success. It's not just the advisor doing it. It's that you feel committed to trying to succeed and hit and accomplish these goals because somebody there is kind of looking over, and if you're not doing it, they'll tell you.
Yeah, I'm sure psychologically there is a little bit of, I don't want to disappoint my financial advisor. It's probably almost similar to like a coach when you're playing sports. Like there's a lot of things you do when you're growing up just because you don't want to disappoint your coach or disappoint your teachers. It's probably similar. It's kind of like it's probably like having a workout partner. Everyone who works out is more successful at working out when you have a consistent gym partner. Because the mornings you wake up and you don't want to go, you don't want to let that person down, right? So it just makes everything more accountable.
How do you quantify the value of that?
I don't know, people's success. I mean, it's proven that it works.
There are individuals out there that view advisors as just an expense. How do you quantify the value that you stay on track more because you have an accountability partner? It's more. The value
cost,
you're going to get is way more than whatever an advisor costs.
What people in this industry charge, the value's not even close. I mean, because one, our costs are not unfair and they're not outrageous. Industry standards are pretty much fair across the board, right? Well, what's it worth to you to accomplish your goals? What number would someone actually put on that? They're never going to pay us that much. If they really think about all the work and the guidance and everything we do, the number that they would throw out is going to be less than you're ever going to pay for that.
There are studies out there that you can go Google quantifying an advisor's value and done by a very large, well-known institution. They say that advisor's value equates to about 3% a year.
There you go.
Now, that said, it comes in different formats. Most of it's through behavior and what we're talking about, helping people execute this strategy. That's where most of the advisor alpha comes from. So if you think about it, we're really charging about a third of what we should.
It wouldn't hurt my feelings if we could charge 3%, but that's never going to happen. So,
yeah, that ain't going to happen. Well, I don't think that's fair.
No, it's not.
Like, I mean, the whole point, at that point, you're breaking even. So what's the point? Like, if your value is 3 and you're breaking even, like, hey, if it's 3% and we charge 1, there's 2% of extra alpha going to the client, 2% of excess returns going to the...
Right, so that's what makes it fair.
Right.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Well, Elias, with that said, I'm looking forward to the massive thaw coming this weekend. Hopefully we get rid of the snow and the cold. If anybody out there is looking to get help, get advice, start to formulate your financial plan, if you're 50 and you don't think you can be a millionaire, click the link in the description below. We'd be happy to help you get on track and at least show you what you need to do to accomplish those goals that you have. Elias, do you have any parting words for everybody?
Just thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. And if you enjoy this content, please subscribe to our channel, via podcast, YouTube, Facebook, X, wherever you're consuming the information. I want to thank everybody for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Premier Investments and Wealth Management and LPL Financial do not provide tax advice. Please consult your tax professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. There's no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect against market risk. Rebalancing a portfolio may cause investors to incur tax liabilities and/or transaction costs, and does not assure profit or protect against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is not a guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal. Rebalancing a portfolio may cause investors to incur tax liabilities and/or transaction costs, and does not assure profit or protect against loss.